I gotta say, it might be the only book that's ever been written, I think that will ever be written, that begins with a chapter on George Washington and concludes with a chapter on Conan O'Brien.
I'll be if this is the only book that ever begins and ends that way, I'll eat my hat.
You think it's the first in a series of many?
I just broke the ice.
It's a genre in the making.
It is.
So connect those two.
Well, frankly, I've known Conan and been lucky enough to be buddies with him for a long time, maybe 10 or 12 years, and I thought I knew him very well, but when I sat down to interview him and ask him some of these questions that I thought were softballs, I was like, hey, how about kids today and their phones, right? Give me some comedy. And he wouldn't. He would give me Gandhi-like pith and sagacity. And I actually teared up a couple times where I was like, Conan, I love you, I admire you. I did not expect like this kick-ass flavor of wisdom from you, but there it was. And the thing about Conan is he's really good at masking his true golden nature with like, I'm just a clumsy puppet up for hijinks.
Sure.
And even I buy it, you know, when in my first book I talked briefly about one time we went for a bike ride in Seattle and he showed up, and he's an avid cyclist, so he showed up in like a cyclist outfit, slathered in sunscreen, and I took a look at him and I was like, you are a goddamn athlete. Like, you're a beautiful Olympic athlete. He somehow tailors his suits to look thinner and more lanky, but he's actually a total Viking badass. I think I say in the book, he's like a threesome baby of Tilda Swinton, a Viking, and a stork. Which, if you gave a young George Washington, could also be described the same way.
Yeah.
Conan
and often was, I
yes.
believe. Yeah.
Biographers, that old chestnut. But they're both these incredible, intrepid leaders that sort of looked at the world around them and used the gifts they'd been given to go as far as possible and to sort of spread decency to as many people as they could. George Washington did it through politics, but in researching him, I was fascinated to learn, now that I know slightly more about politics than I did when we learned about him in school, that he, in the history of our country, is the only president who's ever remained neutral. He was the only guy, and so he was always unanimously elected every time he was put into office, even when it was the general of the continental military to his presidencies, because everyone knew, even if they hated his guts, that he'd listen to everybody and make the fairest decision. And immediately after Washington, they were like, okay, fuck that.
And he walked away. Washington walked away from it all, too.
He did, and he tried for decades. He was like, you know what, you guys, I want to go home to my farm and my wife. And they were like, come on, man, you're the only fair person in the history of our country.
You've got a quote in the book where even King George III admired Washington.
When we won the revolution, everyone, the big fear, you know, they had just like fought this war that there's no way we could have won, and we did, because we're goddamn Americans. and everyone was scared because Washington was so all-powerful that he could have said, okay, now fuck this independence, I'm king of America, and you will all bow before me. He could have done that, like he was in charge. And he said, you know what, I'm gonna resign. I'm gonna abdicate all power. And King George read about that, and he said, if he can do that, he's the greatest man in the world. And he did. I mean, he had that propensity for common sense, that he was like, I'm not going to use this power to fuel my ego. I'm just gonna try and keep it fair for everybody.